Great. Well, thank you very much, Yong Heng. I was thinking before the talk today. I was trying to count up the number of times I've been to Singapore, and I think it's 10 or 12 times now, and over the past 15 years or so. And it's really been wonderful to see how NUS and NUS real estate has gone from merely great to really great in everything they do, as well as to see how Singapore as a city has done exactly the same thing, gone from merely great to just a model city that everybody pays attention to from all over the world. It really is one of the great cities in the world, and it's always a pleasure to come back. I'm going to talk to you about REITs today, and I'm going to primarily talk to you about U.S. REITs, which I know them much better than I know REITs in most other countries. REITs have been a tremendous success story in the United States, and I'm going to talk about a few reasons why they have been very successful. And then I'm going to suggest that REITs as an owner and an operator of commercial real estate, it's a model that we should think about exporting around the world more. REITs have done great things for real estate in terms of being an allocator of capital, relieving some of the stresses on the banking system, and reducing boom and bust in real estate markets. Certainly that's been the story in the United States, and to the extent that we can take that and export it to the rest of the world and do more of the same in the United States, that would be a very good thing. So why don't we get started? I'm going to start with a quote from Ed Glazer, who's a Harvard economist who's visited Singapore. And the quote is, "Singapore is a city innovating under constraint. You have a limited amount of land. You have to make sure you're not wasting it." I think everybody would agree with that statement. And I would only add that, and implicit in the statement is it's not only the land, but it's what you put on it. And the thing that I want to focus on today is it's not only that, but it's who owns and operates it. Okay, that's really the theme of the talk today in the context of REITs. But first, let's talk about who owns real estate around the world. But first, before I show you some numbers, there are basically three categories of owners. There's traditional investors in real estate. And that's up until probably the last 30 years or so. Anywhere in the world you looked, the owners of real estate were the traditional private owners, individuals, families, moguls. And then starting in the 1970s, institutions started taking positions, I think first primarily in the United States. Singapore was a leader with the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Institutions started buying commercial real estate. And when we say institutional, we mean primarily private and public pension funds, endowments and foundations, insurance companies, and sovereign wealth funds. And then finally, although REITs have been around in the United States since 1960, I believe they've been in Singapore now since 2002. Other countries adopted them somewhere in between, some after 2002. But really, REITs have only really mattered, have gained critical mass since the mid-1990s. Before the mid-1990s, there were very, very small players in the United States. So REITs are a very recent phenomenon. But when you look around now, they really own quite a bit of real estate, and they own more and more real estate every year, as does institutional investors. So what are the numbers? The numbers are a little bit startling. These are very recent calculations. I got these numbers from LaSalle Investment Management, and they've been working on putting together these numbers for a number of years now. And maybe working from the grade level over, there's close to estimated there's close to $50 trillion of investable commercial real estate worldwide in U.S. dollars. That's a lot more than I had estimated. I remember I was trying to estimate, and I pulled this together for this talk. I hadn't done this exercise for quite some time. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, I tried to estimate investable commercial real estate in the United States, and at the time I remember my numbers were something like $4 to $6 trillion. $4 to $6 trillion in the United States, investable commercial real estate. And that would have probably put the world investable real estate at around 20 trillion. It's grown a lot in the last 10 or 15 years. $50 trillion. And most of that is privately held because the other two categories are institutional. That's $9 trillion. Those are the pension funds, sovereign wealth, etc. And then public real estate, those are REITs and other publicly traded companies. That's about $3.6 trillion. So when you subtract off the 12.6 that's estimated for institutional and publicly traded, we still have about 37 trillion. A vast majority of real estate is still privately held. But these other two bubbles are getting bigger all the time. In terms of what the U.S. is still the biggest player in terms of probably each of these categories, but the percentages vary. In public real estate, I would say that 40 to 50% estimated is the U.S. ownership share. So they're really by far the biggest players in terms of the REIT market. Institutionally, they're probably 30 to 40% is U.S. real estate, U.S. located real estate. I'll show you some numbers in just a moment. And then that would leave, once you do those calculations, that would leave about 25 to 30% of all real estate being in the U.S. In any case, big numbers. How does this compare to other markets? On the, let's see if I can get the pointer. This is total commercial real estate, right around the $50 trillion mark. This is the estimated global equity market, a little over $50 trillion. So commercial real estate is almost as big worldwide as the stock markets are, equity markets are worldwide, approximately the same size. And then on the debt market side, this is financial, this is private debt, and this is government debt. So each of these pieces are approximately $50 trillion as well. So commercial real estate is about the same size as equities, privately held, privately issued debt, and government debt. When you add these four up, you get about $200 trillion. In other words, based on these numbers, commercial real estate is between 20 and 25% of the market portfolio. Right? If we want to call this investable, 20 to 25% of the market portfolio. Now, we're probably missing some stuff here, some other investable stuff, and maybe the other forms of private equity. And I would just ballpark it, I would say there's probably another $50 trillion of that other stuff that's out there, just to keep our numbers nice and even. So when you add, if that's approximately right, if you add that in, then it looks like in terms of the market portfolio that commercial real estate is somewhere between 15 and 20% of the market, something like that. So if you want to own the market portfolio, right? One of the basic things you learn in finance classes is if you want to be a diversified investor, you want to be along the capital market line. And that means that you own some percentage of the market portfolio and the riskless asset. And that means that if you want to be well diversified, you want to have commercial real estate should be 15 to 20% of your portfolio, right? Those are substantial numbers. Big, surprisingly large. Here's where we are in terms of, here's a time series going back from, whoops, what did I do? Going back to 2001, in terms of shares basically by continent, the Americas are the purple, that's Primera, and that's mostly the United States. Canada is the next biggest piece. Asia Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and Middle East and Africa. And you can see that if you go back before the financial crisis, what's happening is that, it's probably not surprising, is Europe is, but this is just commercial real estate, Europe is losing market share. And United States, or the Americas, primarily United States, are holding steady. And Asia's gaining market share. And if you look at the difference here, Europe going from 41 to 28, losing 13% of the market, that 13% basically has gone to Asia, right? So there's just been a shift from Europe to Asia in terms of the estimated investable real estate that's out there. And then if you go, and this is 2015 when these numbers are estimated, so we're up here at about close to $50 trillion. And by 2020, the LaSalle Group estimates that we'll be up to a little bit in excess of $60 trillion of commercial real estate that's investable, with again Asia gaining our market share. It's also interesting to look at cities, right? So where is the investable real estate located? And again, it may not be surprising, but it's very concentrated. The 20 largest global cities account for 40% of the market. Okay, 20 largest cities account for 40% of the market. That's a lot of concentration, and there's a lot of population concentrated in those top 20 markets. And so it's probably not surprising that it's there, but that has some implications, I think, in terms of investment. And what we have here are two columns. One is this is the estimated institutional investment by market, by city, and this is total commercial real estate. We can see here's Singapore is number 9 on the list on the institutional side and number 7 on the list in terms of total. If we look, Tokyo in terms of value is number 1, right? So the amount of land is small, but the value of that land is extremely high. New York and London are 2, 3, Hong Kong's 4. The ordering here is not terribly surprising. If you count the cities, we've got 4 cities. 4 out of the top 10 cities here are Asia. And 4 out of the top 10 cities are U.S., and then we've got 2 in Europe, Paris and London. And you can see over here in terms of these percentages, this is the top 10. This adds up to these global shares, and then the institutional side add up to 27%. So the top 10 cities, approximately 27% is concentrated of the investable institutional real estate is concentrated in the top 10 cities. Interesting.